Hadu gang, and welcome to the third edition of my Bad Players WoW vlog. I am Daniel Gagne, aka Bad Player 03, aka Rialtus Killdog. What's happening with the raiding scene in WoW right now? The content certainly isn't an issue. The Throne of Thunder's got really high reviews. Seems to be fun, engaging content for all levels, including the LFR. Of course, the older tiers still, brought a lot of enjoyment and fun out of the first part of the expansion, and yet it seems like maybe raiding's a little lackluster. 25-man guilds are still slowly on the decline. 10-man raiding is kind of hurting a little bit, whereas some servers' guilds have trouble finding their last few raiders. Maybe on other servers, raiders have trouble finding finding raiding teams. It seems like the raiders are all scattered and unable to find each other, between guild and raiders. LFR raiders, maybe are just becoming LFR raiders because they're, like myself, reading the content so much and getting so much gear, getting gear slowly over a long period of time, that really it seems to meet that entire need that a raider might have at that level. And maybe players like themselves are to ask themselves, I used to love regular raiding once in a while. Why don't I raid anymore? Why don't I want to do it? Why is it that when I finish the LFR I don't have that desire anymore? I mean, Blizzard themselves has even gone on the record to say that they may have made some mistakes in changing the raid lockout schedule from what was in Wrath of the Lich King, and maybe they're willing to revisit some of the ideas from those older periods of time, namely Wrath of the Lich King, in making some future decisions. So anyways, all this going on in WoW raiding, I gave some thought onto the issue, and I wanted to present a model of raiding that I think will make a huge difference in WoW raiding, from the baseline all the way to the top. Even maybe make LFR a little bit more what it should be intended for, or what maybe it would have been intended for. At the same time, breathe new life into the middle levels of raiding, which maybe are a little lacking and lackluster. At the same time, still support and feed the heroic levels of raiding, which still seem to be thriving, at least for the most part. So anyways, I was hoping you'll join me on this journey in this vlog, as I present to you a model that I think may even go as far as to save WoW raiding, which I'd like to think will save WoW in general, because what would WoW be without raiding? So anyways, sit back and enjoy the ride. So first off, I want to say that the ideas for this model were kind of set in motion by some of the ideas that Lore expressed in the Weekly Marmot this past week. He kind of got the juices flowing and got my mind thinking about raiding and the model that might be most successful. So even though the opinions expressed in this model are my own, the idea or the thought process inspired by Lore, in Lore's honor, I want to call this model the Bad Players Lore model of raiding. So first off, what's the current model of raiding? Well, essentially in a nutshell, you start off running the LFR. It comes out a little bit late, so maybe if you're a big raider, you might have already started raiding a little bit, but you run the LFR, you get some gear to become sufficient for raiding, and then you branch off either into a 10-man or a 25-man guild. And some guilds have a choice of either team, and then of course, if you're really good, you get to your 10-man regular, and then you launch out into 10 and 25-man heroics, but very rarely do these ever cross over each other anymore, and therefore it ends up being a choice. Am I a 25-man raider, or am I a 10-man raider, and am I a 25-man guild, or a 10-man guild? And the problem with this has been mostly that 10-man being a little bit easier, one, to find a team sometimes, and two, to maintain a team for a guild. More and more guilds are choosing to take the 10-man route because it's just simpler, and the 25-man guilds end up being just a few, or the number of remaining hardcore guilds that have always done 25 and swear by it. But slowly they're starting to decline, and of course, as we all know, this was seriously highlighted by Dream Paragon's choice to stop being a 25-man guild and take the route to be the best 10-man heroic guild. At least they've been the most successful to this date. So I would like to see this fixed. I would like to see a model that would make 25-man just a little bit more desirable, give people more coaxing and kind of a nudge in the direction to run 25-man without forcing it on them, and certainly without destroying the heroic tasks, which really, why should Dream Paragon not have the right to be considered a very elite guild for being awesome at 10-man? Why should their 10-man rating be considered lower level than a 25-man heroic guild? So I don't want to see that happen. As one of the ideas that Lore did suggest was that 10-man being heroic being easier. And of course, we can't forget that some raiders are just LFR casual raiders, and that's all they're going to do is run the LFR ad nauseum. Maybe at some point they might do some regular raiding, but there's a lot of people who get enough out of the LFR that they don't need to raid anymore. And this can be a strength of the casual side of WoW, and it can also be a weakness, as I pointed out in my last vlog. So I'm also going to take this into account with the new model, that reflecting on these people as well. So anyways, I'm going to go through some of the underlying things underneath my model that I'm going to present to you today next. So what do we want to keep the same from the current model? First off, 25-man heroic is pretty much exactly the way it should be. Leave it alone. Give it the the nicest title and the best vanity gear to make it to really make the player who does it still feel like they're the highest, most prestige player in the game. But otherwise, leave it alone. 25-man regular doesn't need to change at all either, because really there really isn't any 25-man regular guilds worth, or for the most part, worth noting, because most players who do 25-man regular do so as a stepping stone to 25-man heroic. The reasoning is that 25-man regular is rather inefficient. You work harder to maintain your team without the prestige. So in my experience, most of the guilds that are doing 25-man regular are simply getting through the regular, going on to heroic, killing as many heroic bosses as they can, and going back and finishing on 25-man regular, but they don't run 25-man regular as a be-all and end-all. So that pretty much can stay the same. We're going to add a little bit of enticement, though, as you'll see, to make 25-man regular more interesting to everybody, not just for the 25-man aspiring heroic raider. 10-man heroic, I also don't really want to see this change. I don't see why Dream Paragon and all those other 10-man heroic guilds should have to feel second-rate in their heroic raiding style. Why should 10-man be lower prestige than 25-man? Players who prefer the 10-man intimate group should have that option. I like the current model that has the 10-man heroic being roughly equivalent to 25-man heroic. Don't want to see that change. That's the other thing I want to leave alone from this model. So what then are the main goals of my bad players lore raid model? First off, LFR has to become that basic do-anytime content and a source of gearing up, but it has to gear up players in a reasonable schedule. The idea is we want the average player to expect that if they run the LFR faithfully, that somewhere between 2.5 to 3 months, between 10 and 12 weeks of raiding, that they're going to have roughly a full set of gear, because we want them to be bored with it. We don't want them to feel like it's a crutch that they can just raid LFR month in, month out, and that is their entire World of Warcraft experience. We want them at some point to feel like the LFR is leaving them a little bit lacking. They have to make a choice, whether to find other things to do in the game, or to finally use all that gear they've gained to stretch themselves. So I propose the LFR needs to have a gearing schedule of about 10 to 12 weeks once they start running it, providing they run it faithfully. So it has to be a slightly higher loot rate to accommodate this. So that's once again, that's the whole point. And it's still, regardless of gearing up and being a full set of gear, it's still that do-anytime content for the players that don't have time to be on a set raiding schedule, don't have the desire to raid with people that they have to see week in and week out. It's that casual, I just want to raid today style. It can't go anywhere. It has to be there. As a bad player, I love that. I don't want to see that disappear in any way, shape, and form. The second rule is that 10-man regular has to drop. It has to drop below the 25-man raiding tier, both in difficulty. Not a huge amount, though. It has to be slightly lower in difficulty than 25-man regular, and a decent jump over LFR, of course, which is really easy face roll kind of content for the most part. But it has to be that beer league kind of content for players that just want to get together, have fun, down real bosses, which maybe the LFR doesn't feel that way, or it feels like it's more for random, make-up groups of 25 strangers, whereas the 10-man is for, hey, let's get together in a small group of friends or a small group of guys in our server, and let's just raid this stuff. But also that 10-man regular is still going to be that stepping stone to the next levels. And so therefore, that's kind of the progression path. You start off with the LFR, you get enough gear, and hopefully you branch off to the next level, which is your 10-man regular, to continue that. And maybe you find some friends, maybe you just stretch yourself out, find a pug, go on open raid, whatever, to find that group, and you start raiding that 10-man content, 10-man regular beer league kind of content. Now from that point on, you have to make a choice. Or a person who are, of course, people who already are planning on being 10-man heroic raiders, they got a bit of a jump now from 10-man regular to 10-man heroic, because there's, unless you propose a 2-tier 10-man system, which one is more work for Blizzard, raises the question of what to do with 25-man. Does it need to have, two difficulty levels? So I don't think it needs to be there. I think that gap between 10-man regular and 10-man heroic is actually a healthy thing, because players who are able to navigate that change, namely heroic caliber raiders, are going to have no problem. They're going to finish their 10-man regular, they're going to jump into the 10-man heroic without an issue, and players that are a little more casual, a little less skilled, maybe the beer league player, is going to find that a little more difficult. And the idea being that's going to give them a little more enticement to look at that 25-man level, which is a little bit harder, but not much harder, and has better gear as maybe a potential step. And so perhaps they're going to maybe spend their time pugging a little bit of 25 to get to the next level if they have trouble jumping all the way to the 10-man heroic. And now the key to this 10-man tier as well, the 10-man easier regular as well, is that it has its own lockout. It has no effect on the 25-man lockouts whatsoever, meaning you can actually run both on a set week if you really choose to do so. Or you can run, and it also has no effect on the 10-man heroic schedule. So a 10-man guild, if they so choose, could actually clear 10-man heroic and 10-man regular on the same week if they're really ambitious and that's what they really want to do. And this basically opens up 10-man as a raiding style for everybody every week if they want to do it. An extra source of gear, an extra source of fun, or just a beer league style of raiding to have some time with your buddies in your spare time when you're not doing your normal raiding pass. And I think that's really important to getting players back to that feeling of, I can raid, I want to raid, it's beneficial to raid, and the LFR is just not enough. It's not meant to be enough. So that's why that 10-man being its own lockout is so critical. Of course, 10-man heroics players would have to have an option to, when they go into the 10-man regular after heroic, to have every boss they've killed on heroic to be already dead in the 10-man regular, because you wouldn't want 10-man heroic guilds to have to run through, 3-4 bosses on the heroic level and come back in a 10-man and have to kill them on regular again. That just, if they don't wish to, that just would seem monotonous for guilds that are focused on 10-man heroic. So they have the option when they step into that 10-man regular saying, you've killed 4 bosses on heroic, would you like the lockout to extend into 10-man regular? And they can say yes or no. If they say no, they start fresh in the 10-man regular. They can have their beer league. They can have their extra gearing session, their extra practice on the bosses, or they can take the lockout and they can just finish off the instance on regular to finish their raiding week. So it gives them both those options. So that's the goal of 10-man regular. That's very critical to it all. Now 25-man regular, as I said, is also a key to this because it's slightly higher difficulty, slightly higher gear. So the idea is that, once again, players who maybe aren't ready to make that jump from 10-man regular to 10-man heroic can choose instead, because remember the 10-man regular lockout does not affect the 25-man lockout, to do their 10-man content and to jump into 25-man pugs, 25-man groups. A couple guilds get together and they can do their 25-man content on the same week as they're enjoying their 10-man content. So this will bring us back to a similar style to the Wrath of the Lich King, where people like myself could choose to do both if they really wanted to. And I think this was a lot of fun. I didn't feel like I had to all the time. I know some people will feel they have to, they should, whatever. But I enjoyed the chance to do some 10-man, get through a whole bunch of it, and then do a little bit of 25-man pug in my spare time. So this would open that up again. And that's the third assumption of the guild, of the model. And finally, 10 and 25-man heroic are still going to be left alone. They're still separate separate paths. If you choose to raid the 25-man path, you are no longer able to do 10-man heroic that week. And if you choose to do 10-man heroic that week, you are forbidden from doing 25-man heroic that week. You got to make a choice, one or the other on a given week. Heroic progression and downing of bosses on the heroic level is still as sacred as it is now, which I think is healthy for the game. There is no reason why Dream Paragon should have to do their 10-man heroic and then feel compelled to do 25-man heroic too. That just doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem that it would work, in my mind, in today's rating model. So anyways, these are the underlying assumptions in the model that I'm proposing, the bad players lore model. So now, to discuss how the model is implemented we have to look at the start of new content releases. So, of course, we have expansion releases and we have rating patch releases. And of course, the difference being that I still like the way they did with Mists of Pandaria. When an expansion is released, the first week is no rating, just a chance to gear up, get through the content, level up, get through the content, maybe get a little bit of gear, prepare for rating. And of course, with a content rating patch, there isn't that week off. So basically, you jump right into rating the first week. So either way, I'm going to refer to the first week of rating as week 1. Just remember, you add an extra week to when you have an expansion because of that extra little bit of time there. So anyways, week 1, and this is the cool thing, only 25-man regular is released. So the 25-man heroic raiders can get right onto their progression if they so choose. However, players who would rather run 10 have to make a choice. Do I take the extra week to prepare myself, to level up, gear up, or do I get some friends together and give 25-man a shot just to see the content? Do I want to see it? I got to find 25 people to get together with. The idea being that 25-man raiders get a slight little nudge and a little edge, and also 10-man raiders kind of have a little incentive to maybe try out 25-man. Maybe they'll enjoy it. Maybe they'll find that 25-man run the most enjoyable rating they've had in a long time, and maybe that'll breathe some new life into the overall 25-man format. So that's why I see the 25-man being released first before anything else. Now, week 2, 25-man heroic launches, of course, 10-man regular launches, and get this, 10-man heroic launches. Now, obviously for 25-man regular, they've already ran regular once. They're going to run it again. They're going to run the 25-man heroic. And remember, they can also choose then to run the 10-man to supplement their gear, because it doesn't affect the lockout. So that's kind of cool. It gives them another little bonus, another way to gear up. But the 10-man raider now has a chance to run 10-man regular and run 10-man heroic the same week if they are really ambitious and so choose. So they can get back their week they lost to the 25-man, but they have to work for it. It'll make it a little harder to get that extra week of rating. And really, we're talking about the same bosses, so if they want to do it, they will. Week 3, the first one of the LFR launches. So now, therefore, basically the full content is now available to everybody. Players can choose to run because they're on their path towards their heroic 10 or 25-man direction. They got to choose one or the other. They can also run 10-man Beer League content, and they can run LFR if they want. However, with the 10-man Beer League content being what it is, players who would just rather not do the LFR, even though some players are going to do it anyways, they're going to feel compelled, but they have a chance to say, you know what, the LFR is just not necessary. It's the lowest loot. We're going to run it. We're going to break up into 10-mans, and we're going to run the 10-man regular content for extra gear, and we're just going to say, well, forget the LFR. Or maybe if you want to run the LFR, do it on your own. If not, no big deal. That then gives players the choice of what content to run for supplementary gear, rather than, I got to run the LFR, I got to run the LFR, I got to run the LFR. Of course, 10-man raiders at that point will hopefully be the good ones will be all through the regular contents, working hard on their heroic, and they might choose to use the LFR anyways to supplement their gear because they only have generally 10-man content. However, if they really wanted to, once again, they get friends together and they could 10-man heroic guilds couldn't, because once you choose 10-man heroic, you're not allowed to do 25-man regular and heroic. But the 10-man casual regular guilds could also choose to get together in a pub group and join, or a group of friends or a couple of guilds together and run 25-man regular as well for extra gear, provided they didn't go on to the heroic level, because once again, you got to choose one direction. So yeah, basically gives players lots of flexibility, lots of choice, breathes new life into the raiding scene, and once again gives that extra little enticement and edge and openness to the 25-man raid style for a lot more players to enjoy that if they so choose, getting us back to that extra little oomph we had in 25-man back in Wrath of the Lich King. And of course, for us casual LFR people, the LFR first wing's released, maybe because of the fact that it's released a little later than everything else, maybe the second wing, the second week, maybe, we can still stagger it over the course of a few weeks, but maybe a little less staggering than was done in Mists of Pandaria, because you waited a little longer to get the LFR content available to you. But once again, once you start a segment of LFR, the gearing schedule should be such that you should roughly expect that the vast majority of players will have virtually a full gear set in about 10 to 12 weeks, because we don't want them to stick with that content forever and say, this is all I have to do. This is my entire WoW experience. We want them at some point to feel a little bit of lacking and a little bit of incentive to say, well, you know what, I've got everything I can get out of the LFR. maybe I should use what I've been working so hard for. Maybe get some friends together, join a pug, and try all of this 10-man stuff. It's not supposed to be pretty that hard, people say. So once again, still keep that enticement and that dangling of a different carrot to go into that extra little level and push themselves a little further. And I think this is critical because, as I said in my last vlog, as an LFR raider, I've been running the LFR ad nauseum, week after week after week, straight through the entire tiers, all the tiers so far, and I still have not quite got every single piece of gear out of the first tier, first Mr. Pandaria tier of rating, let alone even scratch the surface on the second tier of rating, and it's exhausting, and it actually allows me, to say, I don't need to do anything else. I've got all the rating I need. I don't ever need to stretch myself and do, 10-man regular or become a raider of any other sort, because LFR is all I need. And two, I can also say, I'm tired. I don't really feel like doing any other rating, and really, who can blame you if you run the same content on, especially multiple tunes week after week after week. So we want to bring back that enticement to stretch yourself once the LFR becomes no longer viable for you. I think that's what's lacking in Mr. Pandaria, as I mentioned in my last vlog, that the LFR just becomes a crutch, and too many borderline raiders who should be and would be reaching out to other levels of rating are just saying it's not worth it, not important, don't need to, too tired, and I think that's hurting the low-level rating scene, and that's one of the dry areas, I think, in the current model, and that's why I think the Bad Players Lore rating model will actually eliminate that and basically just breathe a life and a progression path into rating. You go from LFR to 10-man to 25-man regular to heroic 10-man or heroic 25-man. It's almost like you can almost see the path and how it branches out like a tree about how you're going to progress, or basically if you're really good and have a more direct path, you go straight to 10-man reg and straight to 10-man heroic, or straight 25-man reg and 25-man heroic, but supplementing your gear with maybe the 10-man regular and maybe a little bit of LFR if you need to, but not, once again, as forced, because the 10-man gear is better, regular gear is better, and is allowed to be run on the side and supplements that gearing to the point where LFR maybe doesn't even matter anymore to the 25-man heroic raider, and really maybe it shouldn't. So anyways, that's pretty much my Bad Players Lore model of rating in a nutshell. For those of you who have heard enough and you have the gist of the model, at this point you could choose to stop watching and just let me know what you think, give me some feedback, take it, digest it, and just see if you think this is a model that as I see it, as a way to improve rating all across the board in WoW, or if you want to know a little bit more, in my next little segment I'm going to add in, I'm going to follow the progression path of various types of raiders and what their path is going to look like as they go through raiding in the Bad Players Lore model. So yeah, I entice you to go on to the next level. For those of you who choose not to view the next segment, once again, thanks for watching. I am Realtus Kill Dog, BadPlayer03, and you can follow me on Twitter at BadPlayer03 under the name Daniel Gagne. You could also email me at badplayer03@gmail.com, or you can watch all these videos on my YouTube channel, also under BadPlayer03. Bye now.